started the webinar. So hello, everyone. If you're just coming in to join us for this, our final session in our Understanding Your Learners webinar event. So welcome. For those of you who are joining us in Zoom, please come into the room, say hello in the chat and tell us where you're joining us from, as always. And for anyone watching us on Facebook, welcome, and YouTube, welcome to you too. It's great to have you here. And we're about to start our final session, which is called Emotional Safety and Learning with Georgia Papamichelaidou. So, hi, Georgia, how are you?
Hello, Kath. Thank you very much for inviting me to this incredible series of understanding your learners. It is such an important topic, and I'm truly honored to be here. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's great to have you here. I know you're joining us from Edinburgh today because you're at the IATEFL conference. That's right. Yes.
That's right. Very, very sunny Edinburgh. And actually, I
Yeah.
was talking to you earlier about the fact that I had to pull all of the curtains because it's so sunny here.
Wow, amazing. That's not common in Edinburgh, so you've had good luck there. Okay, so everyone's coming in from the chat. As always, we've got a very international crowd. I can see people from Nigeria, Rehab from Egypt, Oksana is joining us from Australia, Maria from Italy. So welcome to everybody. And we're going to be starting just in a couple of minutes. So before we do that, I'm just going to officially introduce you to our speaker today, who is Georgia, as I said. Georgia is an international educational leader, and also she's a trustee of IATEFL. She has expertise in curriculum design, teacher training, and sustainability. She's passionate about the psychology of learning and teaching, which is what we're talking about today. She also has extensive experience coaching educators to inspire transformational change. And she's based in the UK. Where are you based normally, Georgia?
I am based in beautiful Cambridge, where,
Okay.
fun fact, the cows have come out in the parks. So when
Oh,
cows graze in the parks, then that's a good sign because it's a sign of spring and summer. So it's
okay. So
beautiful.
spring has officially sprung in Cambridge. That's brilliant.
That's true, yes.
Okay. All right. So we're going to make a start now. So I'm going to hand over to you, and we're looking forward to your session. And I'll be back at the end for some questions and answers. If you're joining us in Zoom, if you have any questions you'd like Georgia to answer, please put them in the Q&A, and we'll have a little bit of time at the end to answer those. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Georgia. Okay.
Thank you so much, Kath. What an amazing introduction. And thank you, everyone who's joining me from everywhere in the world, as far as I can see. So, thank you very much for joining our Teaching English webinar on understanding your learners, because this, as I said before, is a really important topic. And part of understanding our learners has to do with emotional safety and our learning, because our emotional brain and our learning brain work well together, and that's how we can learn efficiently. So, just to start with a little bit of a kind of warm-up session. Now, I do need to give you hands up. These sessions are always very, very interactive. So I'm very happy to see that you're very active in the chat, because I will be asking you, and of course, our host, Kath, to be doing some exercises with me as well. So, first things first, are you ready for the first warm up exercise? Let's see. Just write yes or no, maybe. Yeah, sure. Fantastic. Lovely. So, let's start. What I would like you to do is I would give you 40 seconds only to tell me what you're hoping to learn in this session. Remember, you only have 40 seconds, and I have got my timer here. So, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Timer has started. So, what are you hoping to learn in this session? So I can see people are writing to enhance my knowledge and skills, something unique, how to contact with students emotionally, something practical, something new, how to be a good teacher, to make learners comfortable while learning. You have got another 20 seconds. Let's keep it up. How to make your classroom emotionally safe. 10 seconds, please. Practical tips, report, and strategies, how to be a good teacher, something interesting. 3, 2, 1. Time is up. Now, as your, not presenter, but let's say teacher, I will give you again another 40 seconds. Okay. Now, this time, what I would like you to do is in these 40 seconds, I would like you to do the same, but you can't use any words that contain the letter E. So I want you to answer again what you're hoping to get out of this session without the letter E. And your time starts now. I can see some very good answers like build rapport, support, skills. Marilyn and Gates has the word E. Emotion has the word E. So let's see. Skill, tips, boost. Now remember, you cannot use the letter E. Focus, very good. Anything, that's fantastic. Build rapport, you're an incredible audience. I thought that that was going to be very, very hard. Um, we can see other things like good tips, passion for learning has got the letter E. Marilyn, don't worry, you're a star. So I can see other people are writing, support my pupils. Motivation, excellent. We have got 10 seconds left. Brilliant. Fun. I hope this is fun as well. Absolutely. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Amazing. Fantastic. Now, remember that all of the activities that we will be doing in this session are not only for this session. These activities are for you to use in class. For example, this is an activity that I do with my students. I give them a question. For example, what are you doing this weekend? And then I ask them, okay, so now do the same without using the letter E. So a very nice little exercise. But what is the purpose? Why did we use this activity? Because sometimes we give different tasks to our students, but we don't really understand how they're struggling. Sometimes our students struggle quietly, and this little activity showed us exactly this. So, moving on, what are we going to do today? Let's look at the what. So, first of all, when it comes to the what, we're going to look at the three F's in our brain. Can you guess what these three F's are? Let's see your creativity. Let's have a look. While I'm explaining the aims, I want you to guess what these three F's are, and we will see if you're right or wrong. Let's see. We will also look at the learning connection. As I mentioned before, we're going to learn about the emotional brain and our learning brain. And of course, we're going to look at practical tips to create emotional safety in the classroom. So the real question here is, but Georgia, why? Because as we mentioned before, emotional safety helps the students feel comfortable. Someone actually mentioned that in the comments as well. Students are more engaged. And of course, with these practical tips, you will be able to empower your students. They will be coming to you because they feel safe. And that's how they will feel that they are in an environment where they can learn. So let's look at the three F's. Some of you actually did find the answer. So fight, flight, and freeze. Let's have a look at this together. When we say fight, flight, or freeze, what do you think we mean? Fight, flight, or freeze. Let's have a look at this together. Very, very quickly, just a few seconds. I can see, for example, the majority of the people in the audience say reactions, stressful situations, um, a stress response, fantastic. When we are in stressful situations, solving problems, brilliant, very good. So, first things first, uh, please forgive me. Andre did a very good job at showing you a realia of a brain, but I don't have a realia of a brain, but I do have my hands. So, what I want you to do is, and Taff, can I invite you in the stage as well? So, now,
Yes, you can.
hello. I want everyone at home to do this with me. So I want you to hold your hand like this. Excellent. Now, while you do this, let's check the people at home. Have you got your hand like this? Let's see. Very good. Fantastic. So what you see here, this right here is our upstairs brain. This right here is our downstairs brain. And Kath, you can do this with me as well if you want. So that our
Hmm.
upstairs brain and our downstairs brain. This right here in the middle is what we call the amygdala. This is what causes all of the emotions essentially. So our brain, when it works well, when we're very motivated and engaged, these are a nice little face like this. And I would invite you to close your hand like this as well. This means that you're not dysregulated. This means that everything works well together. This is a very nice response to any situation. However, when you're going through a stressful situation, what happens here is that your amygdala is bumping. So when it does that, the upstairs and downstairs don't communicate very well. And what happens here is that your students or us, we do not communicate with others, we don't listen. And this is when we are in a state of dysregulation. What that means is that whatever people tell us, we will not listen. We will let the emotions or the amygdala take over. And this is not a ready mindset. So let's go back to the presentation so that I can show you a little bit more. Now, as we said before, all our parts need to communicate together, and this is the work that we need to do. Now, remember that when this happens, when the students are in this dysregulated stage and the amygdala takes over, what you're asked to do is find a way to ground the students back to the present. How can we do that? With, as Andres mentioned before, with some brain breaks that we are going to look at together as well. But these brain breaks, this grounding technique is very important so that we can ask our students and the amygdala to calm down a little bit, because at that stage you cannot offer any suggestions, we cannot problem solve, but what you can do is you can simply just calm the amygdala so that the brain can go back to its ready mindset. And the ready mindset is the one that we need, because that's how our students learn. So we will be looking at practical suggestions on how to do that. What that I will show you right now is I want you to look at your surroundings and tell me all of the things that are blue in your surrounding. For example, what I can see here, something blue around me, is a little nice sofa that I have got next to me. So what is something blue around you? Give me 5 things that are blue around you. A water bottle, chair, the sky, a folder, pens, book, my mug, a bag. Fantastic. Now, this was a little brain break that relaxes the students. It's what we call a grounding technique. Fantastic, everybody. Now, moving on to the fight, flight, or freeze. What does it look like in the classroom? Because we always look at this term, the fight, flight, or freeze response, but what do they look like in the classroom? So first things first, let's go to the fight. This is when you have students who are quite aggressive at times, or maybe hyperactive, or they want to scream, yell, or they just want to argue with everyone. They take offense with anything that you tell them. So this kind of behavior shows that the student you're learning does not feel quite safe. So their approach, their response is to fight. Some other people and some other learners, of course, respond differently. Their response when they don't feel comfortable is to flight. What do we mean by flight? The flight means that the learners can be disengaged, or they avoid other people, they are socially awkward a little bit as well, they skip classes, they withdraw, they're not focused. This is what flight looks like in the classroom. And finally, another dysregulated stage is the freeze. This is when we see students who refuse to participate, they do not respond to you, and they also have a blind look. They do not engage. And this is their inability to react. So, these are three stages that are caused, again, as we mentioned before, by a dysregulated mind. So this is the three states that we have. So let's do a little bit of a practical exercise. Now, this is an image that I've created using ChatGPT. And what you see here is different expressions. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at the picture and identify times when your students felt this way. Oh, apologies. So when your students felt this way, what was the context? For example, when I used to be an exam preparation teacher, my students would usually feel this way, so quite sad, or they would feel quite angry, or they would be quite shocked at their scores. Rarely would I see them being smiley. So, what I want you to do is I want you to tell me what was the context when a student of yours would feel this way. So I can see people writing things like before exams. So just give me the context and tell me how they were feeling. I will mention another example. In my school, for example, we have got some students who come to the UK for the first time. So their feelings are both excitement, a little bit of shock because of the culture shock, and also they might be homesick. So this is the context that they come in a foreign country for the first time and they don't really know how to regulate their emotions. Now, I also see in the comments, we see people who say when students are overwhelmed, when they lose at a game, they can get angry. Fantastic. So they sometimes feel disappointed about something that happened in class. They might be feeling shame. Very good. Or when they don't understand the lesson. Fantastic. Now, again, it is very important to look at the context because the context can teach us a lot of things. The environment our students are in can teach us a lot of things about how they're doing and how they're reacting. Are they using the fight, flight, or freeze response? So, now, what I want you to do now is I want you to use this sentence. When I feel, I can, I will mention a personal example. When I feel extremely tired, I can cry. So that is my emotional response when I am exhausted. So when I feel exhausted, I can cry. What about you? If you feel comfortable sharing, please share in the comments this sentence. When I feel da da da, I can da da da. So I can see some people are writing. When I feel content, I can think clearly. When I feel sad, I can cry and avoid others. When I feel bullied, I'm sorry, Natalia, I cannot understand this a lot. If you want, please repeat it. When I feel existed, I can make a mistake. Aha, these are very interesting expressions. When I feel disappointed, I can think of my strength. Fantastic. When I feel frustrated, I shout. Brilliant. So now what you see here is that you are placed in a position where you're asked to understand your emotion, but also your reaction. And I can see from your beautiful sentences that some of you use the response fight, flight, or freeze. And then I want to mention something that Mahmouda has said. Um, when I feel, when I feel, I can smile. That's very, very interesting. So This is a nice little exercise that you can do with your students. You can show them a picture like this that you can create yourself as well. So with this picture, what you can do is you can initiate very interesting conversations with your students about their own emotions. And you can do this little sentence completion at the end of the lesson. So you can ask them at the end of a lesson, so how do you feel today? So for example, when I feel, let's say, hungry, I can cry, for instance, or I can say here, when I feel angry, I don't care about anything. So this is another freeze response. Excellent. Fantastic contribution, everybody. Well done. Now, as we mentioned before, let's put things in context. When would you hear expressions like that in your class? Let's have a look at the context, and I want you to think again expressions and the context. So, the expression here is, oh, you must be joking. What would be the context in something like this, when you hear something like this? For example, for me, it would be, as an exam preparation teacher, it would be, hey guys, you have got more homework. So, of course, the students would say, you must be joking. So I can see people are writing, we have a quiz today, a joke that made us laugh. Lovely. Shocking news. Excellent. Lovely. Or let's do another example. Oh, that's very kind of you. That's very kind of you. In what in what occasion would you hear that beautiful sentence? And I can see people say things like no homework when I offer help. Excellent. Beautiful, fantastic ideas. When you give a reward, excellent. Now, remember, this is a nice exercise to do with your students to teach functional language as well. Of course, in this session, we're using it to understand the context of our students' feelings. Because don't forget that we are talking about understanding our learners. So this is a nice little trick that you can do, and you can also use it as a grounding technique as well. Now, let's move on to the learning connection. This is a quote that I really, really like. And I want us to look at it for a few seconds here. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. My question to you is, how do you witness this in your classrooms? And I'm going to take the quote away, and I want you to think how you witness this in your classrooms. So I can see people are writing, when the teacher gives me a present, for example, when I feel loved, secure, appreciation matters a lot. Fantastic. Excellent. When a learner hugs you, brilliant. So it is true that appreciation and positive feedback matters. And it's very true also that students will always remember their favorite teachers because of how valued and loved they felt. Equally, as Nabila says, a teacher who shames a student will leave a bad feeling forever. This is very, very true. And this is the point of today's session of understanding our learners. This is one way to do that. So, let's look at an example. So let's say that we have got a new student in the school. So this student, for example, says, hey, I want another host family, or hey, I want morning classes only. Oh my goodness, it's too cold, or I'm bored. So this is what a student can say to me. But what do they really think? When they come to my office and they say things like that, what do they really think? Probably they're thinking, what is best for me? There are too many changes in my life. Or I paid lots of money, so I want something awesome. Now, how does this student feel? I also think that the student can feel overwhelmed or excited or anxious or free to do whatever they want or maybe unsure of whom to trust. And the real question is, what does the student do? Maybe they speak to a host. Maybe they ask the students or the student services team some questions, or maybe they meet a friend or they join a social activity just to make sure that they do not struggle with these thoughts. This, what we just did, is called empathy mapping. This is a very nice exercise that you can do on your own when you try to understand your learners, but also you can do this with your students too. So, empathy teaching is about sharing students' emotions, sharing our emotions so that we can enhance communication and, of course, increase our students' engagement. And now let's do this a little bit together as well. I want you to tell me something that you think and what you do based on this thought. When you are, for example, in a stressful situation or whether you are in a calm situation. So let's try this example together. Let's do this empathy mapping. For those of you at home, you can also do this on pen and paper, which is also very useful as well. Very good. Excellent. So, for example, Maria says showing students empathy when they feel insecure or frustrated is very important. Exactly, Maria. Thank you. Very good. So, this, as I said before, is what we call empathy mapping. And you can also see that in many other ways, like this, for example. This is what we call a map, and you have got different emotions here. For example, when we when we experience joy, what triggers joy? And write in the comments as well, what triggers joy? For me, when it's sunny, I always feel joy. I can see people write success, connection, holiday, fantastic. Money, excellent. Rainy day, brilliant, positive people. Very nice. Now, let's look at pride. What triggers pride in you? What triggers pride? For example, an achievement, my children, milestone, fantastic suggestions, everybody. For me, what triggers pride is when people are kind to one another. And I can see the connection here in this British Council webinar is so beautiful that it makes me feel pride. So that's a trigger for me. Now, let's look a little bit at the not so positive emotions. Anxiety. What triggers anxiety? If you want to share, feel free to share. You don't have to. Now, for example, for me, what triggers anxiety is, as many people have mentioned, uncertainty. And this is very, very good. Or some people are writing public speaking, lack of communication. Excellent. Now, what you can do after you realize the context is to look at the response. Let's go back to joy. So, what I said before, that what triggers joy in me is when it's nice and sunny. And what is my response? Usually, I go out for a walk, or I might feel very, very motivated to encourage my friends to go out with me, for example. What does that look to my friends and family? They always tell me that, "Oh, Georgia, you look happy. What happened?" Nothing really happened. It's just sunny. It's beautiful. So that's what I'm going to ask you to as well. So think of a time when you felt true joy, as you mentioned before, and tell me how you reacted and how people perceived it. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. And let's talk about joy because it's Friday. We're in a fantastic webinar. So let's do that. Excellent. Now, I can see that Ben, for example, writes bike ride with friends, feeling connected and healthy and active. Very good. When I go shopping, fantastic. Excellent. I smiled, I was inspired and full of strength. Brilliant. Fantastic comments, everybody. Now, remember that this is something that you can do with your students as well, because your students can learn how to appreciate their feelings and how to communicate their feelings to you as well. And of course, you can improve their vocabulary as well. Remember that all of these exercises can be used not only as part of the emotional safety and learning webinar, but also for your classes to build rapport with your students. Now, another thing that I like doing in my classes is this, especially on a Monday morning. I give my students the voice to express their feelings and, of course, very important, to use their English. And I have created a Padlet board where I ask my students to come on a Monday and complain about what they want to complain. And this Padlet is called What Do You Usually Moan About? And you can see people write things like seriously, what's the deal with all the work starting on Monday? Or in my case, I usually moan myself about my studying English that is not growing up, for example. To be honest, I always went to learn English quickly, maybe in one day. So, in my opinion, I always moan about it. So, now what we see here is, of course, a lot of mistakes, vocabulary and grammar mistakes. But as teachers, what we see is number one, did my students use linking words that I asked them to use? So if I look at the Padlet board here, how many linking words can you see? Let's have a look. To be honest, like seriously, in my case, I will use I usually, honestly, personally, to be frank. Of course, they will make mistakes, but right now, that's not the moment for me to correct their mistakes. What I want them to do is use one bit of vocabulary and grammar we were learning, which was the linking words, and I also used it to ask them to complain about something, to let all of the anxiety out. And this, as Maria says, thank you, Maria, this is a very good activity also for learning adjectives and adverbs. Fantastic. So just let your students complain. And I honestly believe that Mondays are fantastic days to get your students to complain. Excellent. So if I ask you now to let some steam off and complain yourself as well, just a tiny bit, what would you complain about? Just let some steam off. Just complain a little bit. Let's let it all out. If you want again to share, let's see. Oh, constant roadworks in Barcelona. There we go. I'm tired. Learners will motivate. I complain about working Saturdays, traffic jam, the long working hours, responsibilities, electricity, my two teenagers. You are incredible. Prices going up. Personally, I moan when there is a heavy traffic jam on the road. Can we just say also, Vahid, thank you very much for using a linking word, because I can see you are the only one who did. So well spotted, Vahid. Excellent. Fantastic, everybody. Now, um, this, as I said before, is a nice brain break that you can use with your students. And now, speaking of activities, let's talk about emotional safety in the classroom, which is extremely important as we saw before. Now, our students usually present very big emotions, and there are different ways to deal with these very big emotions. Number one, use less words. What do I mean by that? Do you remember the hand approach? Let me see. Do you remember the hand approach with our amygdala? When it's bumping, fantastic, very good. Now, when your students are in this dysregulated state, what you can do is offer them options. So, by offering them options, for example, do you want to sit here or do you want to go out? Sometimes this gives them the power and the encouragement to calm down a little bit and make a decision that is not based on emotions. But what's important for you is to use less words. The second thing that you can do when you deal with big emotions is to use brain breaks. Andrea mentioned this before, but we're going to also look at brain breaks with a lot of English in them. And you will see what I mean. We're also going to talk about sensory items, which are very important, little fidgets that the students can use in class. And we are going to look at some grounding techniques. Before I ask you to tell me something that is blue around your environment, what I will ask you now is together, all of us together, we're going to pause for a second. No typing. Agreed? No typing. I want you to pause for a second, close your eyes, and listen to three things. What are the three things that you can listen in your environment? Close your eyes, open your ears, and I will tell you the three things that I can hear. I can hear my computer running. I can hear the cars outside. And I can hear people running on the corridor. What about you? What can you hear? We can see things like birds, the clock sound, a car passing by, dog barking, TV, cars, AC. Now, we did this because before I asked you to complain. And by complaining, you were a little bit dysregulated. So, what we did just now is a grounding technique to bring you a little bit back to the present, to this fantastic webinar with all of you brilliant people. Now, let's do this using our very nice report activities. So what I want you to do is this is a very nice quick brain break, but we're also going to do a little bit of pronunciation. So for example, what I want you to do, I want you, and Kath, would you like to join me with this activity?
Sure.
Excellent. So, Kath, I will ask you to say hello in different ways. For the people watching us from home, I want you to truly do this. If you're by yourself, of course, and if you feel comfortable, do this with me as well. Okay? So, Kath, can you please say hello as if you're talking to your best friend?
Hello.
Oh, that's brilliant. Now, for example, for me, as a Greek, I would say, hey, Agatha. Excellent. Now, Kath, I would like you, and I can see some people, sorry, some people are writing, yo, hi, Bella, hey. Brilliant. Now, don't forget that this is a pronunciation activity. Fantastic. So, typing is good, but also feel free to say it by yourselves as well. Now, Kath, I want you to say hello as if you're talking to a cute baby. Very nice. So, for example, I would say, oh, you're a cutie pie. Hi, babe. Very, very nice. Now I can see some people are writing as well. Brilliant. And now I want you to say hello as if you're talking to your boss. So how would you?
Hello. That's professional.
Exactly. Very professional. Very nice. Yes. So for example, I would say, hello, sir. Very, very, yes, very serious. Yeah, very good. And I
Yeah,
can see some people are also saying good morning, only hi, sir, with a smile. Fantastic. Now, thank you very much, Kath. You've
you're
been
welcome.
fantastic. Now, of course, this is a very good pronunciation activity you can do with your students in class, and it's also a very good activity to just give a little bit of a pause for your students as well. Excellent. Now, let's do another brain break. Okay? So, I want you to use your hands this time, and I want you to make your hands take on different characteristics. So, Kath, can I please ask you to come back to the stage for a second?
Stop.
So, thank you very much, Kath. So, this is going to be a very practical activity. And, Kath, I want you to use your hands
Mhm.
and pretend that you're nervous. How would your hands show this? Ah, very good. And now that's for the people watching us from home. I want you to do the same. How would you do that? So for example, when I'm nervous, I
Mm.
also like do things like
Mm.
that as well. Yes. So now let's do another one. Let's do when you're greedy. Exactly. Yes. Absolutely. And let's do another one. Flubby.
Oh,
Yes. How would you do
that's
flubby?
that's difficult.
Yes. Flubby gives me this sort of movement. Very nice. What about magic?
Um, something like that.
Yes, very good. Yeah, like ta-da!
Yeah.
Very, very good. What about fierce?
Oof, that's difficult.
Very good. Yeah. And gentle? Excellent. Now, as we said before, these are very nice ideas to use with your students. And the similar one, and of course, you can teach vocabulary as well, while also getting your students to do something interactive. And
Mm.
another quick brain break that you can do with your students while also learning English is to explore your five senses by pretending to do the following. So now, Kath, I want you to pretend that you're touching a hot stove. Excellent. Yes. Now, I want you to pretend that you're tasting a sour lemon. Fantastic. Brilliant, Kath. Now, Kath, I want you to pretend that you see a giant.
A giant. All right, I think you're going to
Yes.
say giant something. A giant.
Yes. Very good. And then let's do another one. I want you to pretend that you hear underwater sounds. Brilliant, Kath. You've been fantastic. Now,
Oh.
thank you so much, Kath. Now, of course, as we said before, these are all little fun activities that bring your students back. And what do we mean? We bring them back when there is a little bit of confusion in class, when your students are stressed. Of course, during exam preparation classes, believe it or not, this was one of my students' favorite activity during exam preparation classes. We used to do that every Friday to just sign off the week essentially. Okay, and of course you can have all of the different senses as well, and as Maria says, great for learning vocabulary as well. Now, let's move on to emotional safety with sensory items. So we have got, for example, different sensory items, like, for example, the little fidgets like this, for instance, that the students can use to keep their fingers occupied. In my office, I have got little fidgets like this. So whenever a student comes to me for a mental health first aid session, I always ask them to choose one of the toys so that they can just relax a little bit. Because believe it or not, when we feel stressed and emotionally dysregulated, all of the tension comes here. And this is why we did all of the sensory activities. Because if you think about it, when you're stressed, you always do something with your fingers or with your feet. So, fidgets in the classroom are very useful. It can be a fidget like, for example, some blue tack. If you have a blue tack that the student, or some Play-Doh that the students can play with or reshape, for example, This is very good, especially with teenage students or very young learners. Please be careful. Don't have anything that is tiny. We say health and safety first, but anything that is causing stress to your students, you can just give them little tools that they can use. What do these tools do? They help them manage their anxiety. And I do the same thing. I have got what I call an anxiety ring that looks like this, and then I just play around with it with my fingers, and that takes the stress out and it helps me relax a little bit as well. Okay. So, how are we doing? Let me do a quick emotional check. How's everybody feeling? Let's do a quick emotional check. Let's do. How are you feeling? I can see smiley, fine, good, fantastic, peaceful, comfortable, great, relaxed, fantastic, good. I can see some people are tired. Very good. It's good to mention that you're tired because then you can just go and relax. I can see some people say very excited, brilliant, splendid. Amazing, relaxed, fantastic. Now, let's do a little bit of reflection because reflecting is very, very important. This is the reflection target that I like doing with my students. It's something that I actually have this sort of target in the classroom, and we do one thing you've learned, one thing you want to know more about, one thing you already knew, and my favorite, give yourself a compliment. This is what we call the reflection target, and we do it after every lesson. So, what I would like you to do now is I would like you to tell me one thing you already knew. Let's see, one thing that you already knew. Write your comments in the section. So a lot of people write so, for example, the fidget spinners, for example, the fidgets, fantastic. The three F's, how to manage stress with tools, excellent. Empathy is important, beautiful, excellent comments, fantastic. Now, what I want you to do is I want you now to tell me one new thing you've learned. One new thing you've learned. I can see people are writing the amygdala, fantastic. The three F's, lots of new things, the brain breaks, strategies for the brain breaks, practical activities, empathy mapping. Oh, fantastic. You're incredible, everybody. And finally, which is my favorite, as you can tell, is I want you to give yourself a compliment. And I want you to start with I am boom, 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 boom. Oh, I can see I am amazing, beautiful. Give yourself a compliment. Don't be modest. You don't need to be modest. Excellent. I'm funny. Excellent. I'm so intelligent and motivated. I'm a good teacher. Brilliant. Well done, everybody. These are fantastic compliments for yourselves. And thank you so, so very much for being such an interactive and engaging audience. You have been incredible. And just by being here at this Teaching English webinar by the British Council, that means that you are truly incredible teachers. And thank you so very much. Brilliant. So I think that we can move now to the questions.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much for that session, Georgia, and thanks for making me work during that session. I enjoyed that a lot. That was great, and loads of really practical ideas and really nice ideas that I think people will, very easy to implement in classes. So I think a lot of people will be using those. So that's fantastic. We've got time for some questions, so let's dive straight in. Um, I've got a question here from Rusty. At the beginning, you talked about the fight, flight, or freeze. It's quite difficult to say that. And the question is, it would be great to discuss the way of handling a freezing reaction. So obviously, fight or flight is kind of quite evident, but if somebody freezes in the class, or if you see that somebody is just not engaging at all, do you have any strategies to work with students like that?
That's a very, very good question. Thank you, Kath, for reading it. The thing with freezing
Mm,
is that students do not feel comfortable, and whatever you ask them to do, they will not do it at all. So, of course, students work in different ways. For example, if you try to convince them to work in an activity, they might completely disassociate and they might completely think, oh, this teacher is forcing me to do things. What you can do in that case is observe your student and say, do they need a little bit of space? If they need a little bit of space, offer them two options, as we said before. So, do you want to work on this alone or with a
mhm,
group? They will appreciate the options. So, my suggestion is very, very simple, nothing that you don't do already, but give them options with very few words that they can just relax in the thought that they have options.
mm,
Or another example would be, would you like to do this at home? Or would you like to do this here? That's
yeah.
what the students who feel freeze will appreciate.
Yeah, that's a really interesting answer. And actually, that's something that I've dealt with in class, students who, and it's sometimes not clear if it's a lack of confidence or, there can be lots of reasons for it. So I think those strategies are good, but it can be difficult if somebody's just kind of refusing to engage. I think also with young learners, when we talk about motivation, there's sometimes um, they don't want to be at the class. They're going to class because they're being forced to. So that makes it very difficult, doesn't it, to kind of get through that barrier?
Absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely, Kath. And I think that, of course, we need to give ourselves a little bit of a time limit as well, because, of course,
mm,
we're there to observe our students and to give them space. But if we see that their performance is going down, then, of course, we need to go back to the guardians or the parents or to
mhm.
the safeguarding lead in your schools and do mention the patterns that you see in class because at the end of
Yeah.
the day, we are not experts
Mm,
in the field. So we are there to teach English and to make our students feel comfortable.
mm.
Yes. And that's why
Yeah.
an important time limit is very important.
Yeah. That kind of leads on to another question we've got in the chat, which is interesting, I suppose. And it says, if students share traumatic life experiences with us, because obviously, when we create emotional safety, students may feel able to open up to us about things that
Mhm.
perhaps they don't with other teachers or with other people. Um, and this person, Malar, in the chat is saying, how should I respond if somebody shares something like that with me?
Mhm. Now, Malara, thank you very much. It's a very important question, to be honest, because our students will come to class not only to learn, but also to feel connected. Because some students do not feel connected at home. So you might be that person that makes them feel welcome and connected. The important thing, however, is to tell them to not make any promises that you will not speak to somebody
Mm,
because they need to know that you look after them and their safety is important. So don't
mm,
make any promises that you will not speak to their parents. If this traumatic experience is something very severe, my suggestion is to listen, do not respond, do not give advice, because again, we are not experts. So the best thing you can do is go to the person responsible in your school, or if
mhm.
you're an one-to-one teacher or an online teacher, maybe it's worth mentioning to their parents or guardians and make sure that the student understands that we want you to be safe.
Yeah,
So,
sure. Yeah, yeah. That's good advice. Yeah. Do you think as well, just generally with this question about, I really liked the activity with the empathy mapping and
mhm,
kind of thinking about emotions and how they present and how they can seem to other people. Have you found, because I know you work with a lot of teachers as well, have you found that often teachers find this difficult? I mean, we're talking about helping our learners do this, but I think in a lot of cases, probably we as teachers need to also work on our own um, recognition of our own sort of regulation of our feelings.
yes, that's very true, Kath. Not everyone is open to accepting their emotions the way that we present in webinars, because it's true that some people feel so emotionally overwhelmed, and by people, of course, I mean our teachers too. They feel so
Mm,
emotionally overwhelmed that they just want to go in and teach, and then that's it. That doesn't
mm,
mean that you're a bad teacher, not at all.
mm,
But emotional safety has to work both ways, both for the students and
mm.
for the teachers as well. So,
Yeah,
what I always suggest is do as you feel comfortable. If you're not comfortable dealing with a dysregulated situation, speak to someone who can help you. You're not
yeah,
alone in teaching.
yeah, yeah. That's great advice, I think. Yeah. And also, like you say, one thing that comes up again and again when we talk to teachers is the feeling of burnout or the feeling of, being overwhelmed. And so it's kind of important for teachers as well to think about this for themselves and get support. Okay, another question here from Tetiana, who's asking about fidget toys that you mentioned. And they say, what do you do if you see that the student with a fidget toy is not paying attention to what you're saying anymore? Do you take it away at any point in the lesson?
Hmm. That's the classic question, Tatiana. Thank you very much. So, it really depends on the student, because you know your students more than anyone else, better than anyone else. So, for
Mm,
example, if you see that the student uses this toy and they continuously, so for example, let's say this, they continuously stop paying attention, they distract other students, I would suggest just taking the student out of class at the end of class and then just talk to them and say, hey, look, I know that this helps you concentrate, but it's becoming a little bit distracting. So,
mhm.
what's going on? Tell me.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Clear communication is key always.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got another couple of questions. Somebody here is saying, how can we, Arijis is saying, how can we motivate students to rely and use critical thinking? So I suppose, they're referring here to being critical thinking about their own emotions and kind of situations. How can we encourage learners to do that? That's quite a big question.
Oh, it is. It really depends on the skill, doesn't it? Because I think that all of the critical thinking happens with good questions that we teachers ask. So, for example,
Mm,
if I ask my students, is everything okay? Have you understood what I said? So, if I ask you, everybody, have you understood what I said in the session? It's highly likely you will say yes. I
mm.
hope.
Yeah,
But if I ask
absolutely.
you questions like, how can you tell me one way that you can help your students regulate their mindset? What would that be?
Yeah.
So asking the right questions. I'm a little bit worried, Kath, that people in the comments do not write any answers.
I think they participated a lot. Yeah, we've got one of a question from one of our viewers on Facebook. Marianne has said, "Can you share three pieces of advice for us? Maybe not three, but the question more generally is talking about dealing with Generation Z or Gen Z. Um, I guess they're talking about connecting with a younger generation, and they're saying, is it necessary to know slang or know vocabulary that that generation is using to be able to kind of connect emotionally with them? What would you say about that?
Oh, that's a great question. So, first of all, I want to start with an example. One of my students told me one day, oh, that's a snack. I didn't
Okay,
understand what that meant, but that's a snack means that is brilliant, that is gorgeous. So I
right.
think that the best thing you can do is just be your wonderful self and just try to
Yeah,
understand younger generations. Understanding is step number one always.
yeah,
Because if we remember our grandparents who would say, oh, this old generation with these young people and their music. Yes, of course, I keep complaining about music that new people listen to, but just trying to understand them is step number one.
yeah. And also learning from them, I guess, is also important, right? They can teach you.
Exactly, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
We
And
always
actually
learn from our
talk
students.
talking about that, actually coming up just after the break is after the Easter break is World English Day. And actually we're going to be looking at some of the younger generation phrases and idioms that people use in English. So stay tuned for that, because we will be having a new lesson plan about that coming up very soon in a couple of weeks on Teaching English. So that's a good
Brilliant.
opportunity to look at that. Okay, we've come to the end of the session, Georgia, which is a real shame because it's been great and there's been so many great practical ideas. And it's a really nice way to end the working week for some of us on a Friday, talking about social, emotional learning and emotional safety. So thank you so much for being here and joining us. And thanks
Thank you
so much
very
to
much.
everybody who's joined us on Zoom and on Facebook and for all your participation. Thanks also to Wiam on Facebook and Joe here for moderating. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Georgia will be joining us for a Facebook Live, I think on May the 3rd. Is that right? With
That
Andre.
is
So
correct.
please send in more questions for them for that event as well. And we look forward to seeing everybody back here for our event next month, which is on AI and inclusion. So thanks for joining us and have a great weekend wherever you are. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Bye
Kath.
bye. See you. Bye bye.